Good evening. We'd like to welcome you all to our July school board meeting. We'd like to begin with a pledge and then an invocation. The pledge will be offered by Lanista and prepared by Kelly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to be here this evening. We're grateful for all that we have. We're grateful to serve the district, and we pray for guidance and help as we go through this evening and make decisions and hopefully do what's best for kids. And we're grateful for all that we have, and we're grateful for the moisture we've received. And we pray that we will continue to receive some according to thy will. We love thee very much, and we're thankful for all that we have. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 3.2, approval of 21-22 SY employee calendar. Mr. Housley?
So, Mr. Larson and members of the board, these are the calendars that outline for our employees the time, our work days and not work days. They're in line with the calendar that was approved for the upcoming school year. And we just bring those to you this evening for your consideration.
The only thing I have, Mr. Vice President, is that it says on this calendar that the first day of school is on August 4th. I thought it was on August 5th.
It is the 4th.
It is the 4th?
Yes.
I'm a day off. I thought it was on Thursday.
My son's going to be happy. He thought it was the 3rd.
Believe me, the 5th would have been better for me because my anniversary is on the 3rd.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed that on the 12-month employee paid holidays, on number 10 for Martin Luther King Day, there isn't actually a day listed. I just noticed.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, the date is.
Yeah, it says Monday, January 2022.
Okay.
We'll make sure we edit that before
Yeah.
we publish it. Thank you.
I'll make motion to approve the 21-22 school year employee calendars as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 3.3, Mr. Housley, Superintendent Report.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Members of the board, I wanted to report and give an update on just a few things as we move into July. We have finally, after a long conversation, here's how it started. We said in our first meeting after the fire with the district office with the insurance company, and they said, "Oh, we'll have you back in 6 to 8 months." They didn't even have a decision on what they were going to do within that time frame. So we, in a meeting 2 weeks ago now, maybe just a little bit longer than that, the insurance has determined that the building is not fit to rebuild as its current structure. So they did engineering surveys of the foundation, of the brick veneer, of the drywall, which in some places, because of the remodel, there were 3 layers of drywall. You can see they opened it up because those trusses they knew were destroyed. They evaluated all the other trusses. The electrical, most things to build back, a lot of them were out of compliance of current code. So they couldn't leave those in place necessarily without some work with the city and the codes office. So they have determined that they will demolish the building. And our preliminary discussion with them, we have another meeting coming up here soon. But the preliminary discussion was you could build the same footprint. You can adjust any of the interior walls, except for the bathrooms would have to stay where they are. And so that's where we are right now. When we get more information, we'll bring it back to the board for further consideration. I know we talked about wanting to, this is an opportunity perhaps for us as we talked about the budget and other things. If you have an opportunity to expand a footprint, when you're rebuilding it back, that is a time to do that. Also, if we don't feel like we can afford to expand the footprint, to at least have it designed on a large, whatever scale footprint that we would ideally want, and then phase it out into phases so that, hey, we can afford phase 1, but because of the way we designed it, phase 2 and 3 wouldn't cost us as much because the building's designed to add on. So there are some things to consider as we move forward. Realistically, it doesn't have to go on the same slab in the same exact location. So if there is a location, even just right there on that property, we have property around there, or somewhere else on that main big portion of the campus, or somewhere else that the board would desire to put it, we technically could, but we do have to evaluate what cost that would entail putting it somewhere else. So anything outside of the valuation of the building and what they would pay back for it, we would have to fund. So
Don't
Well-
settle. Oh, go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, will the removal of the building include the foundation? Or are they expecting us to build on top of that existing foundation?
I think it includes leaving the foundation there, and that's why they said that the footprint could change interior except for where the bathrooms were, because the plumbing comes up through the concrete.
I was just going to say, don't accept the first offer. Negotiate. I actually learned that from an insurance agent, so yeah.
We're looking forward to the process. When we rented the building that we did, it was a month for a year. So hopefully our landlord doesn't say at the end of the year, sorry, I've got other tenants that are going to give me a 5-year lease, and say, but he's been really good. So I think that will be okay.
He has. We're grateful for him being so amenable to helping us out there.
That's where we are with that portion of it. I do want to report to the board and ask for maybe a plea to the community a little bit. In the last 2 weeks, we've had a break-in and vandalism on our softball field, concession stand and school board, or storeroom. We had them then take the thing that they broke off of the door and break into Whipple Ranch and explode a fire extinguisher and ruin some computers and some other things and make a mess of things. And then also broke into another area. And then this Sunday, they broke into the auditorium, broke the brand new windows that we put in. They're designed with the metal mesh in them. And they spent long enough out the window to break that and to destroy the metal mesh, which is supposed to prevent that from happening. Went in, again, let off a fire extinguisher, and did some other damage. And then this morning we found one of our White Fleet vehicles that's parked at Whipple Ranch had the windows broke out of it. So something's going on, and whatever that is, I just wanted to report to you and to the community, if they're watching, more eyes make better. It just seems like random acts of wanting to destroy things happening in the evenings. We want any help that we can to find out who they are. I know the PD's they have the reports and they're doing what they can, and hopefully we can find out who it is. That is, thank you.
May I say that that really disappoints me. I'm sure it disappoints all of us. And I feel like we've worked really hard in order to try to make things a lot better for our schools. And for this to happen is really heartbreaking. And I'm sorry to hear it. And my hope would be that whoever's perpetrating this would take some time to think about the fact that our schools are really close to the heartbeat of our community, and our love for the kids that we serve, and our love and appreciation for the staff and everything. I wish that this would stop. So that would be my plea. Thank you. Item 3.4, call to the audience. We have two. Juliana, I'm not even going to attempt your last name. I'm sorry. I just know I would butcher it. If you'd come up and see us. I want to remind everybody, I believe it's 3 minutes we have. Juliana, tell me how to say your last name.
It's Wyżyńska.
See, I knew I wasn't even close. I was saying it in my mind. I wasn't even close. Thank you.
So my name is Juliana Wyżyńska. I recently moved to Sholo about 5 months ago. By trade, medical malpractice and personal injury paralegal. And I'm just going to tell you personally, before I became a medical malpractice paralegal, I was a very strong pro-vaccination person, always got vaccinated. Everything changed when I was about 18 years of age. My mother got vaccinated. A standard flu vaccination, she almost died from it. And the doctors couldn't do anything. I had to search and go to the people and find out a special system of vitamin C to do for her. And within 1 month, she started moving again and walking again. So I just wanted to address the board and ask if you can please be very cautious with any requests to mandatory vaccinate children. I personally have seen the autopsies of children after vaccinations, the damage that it does to the body. And I would strongly advise any parent considering vaccination to read all of the ingredients, some of which are very toxic, including HEK, which stands for human embryo kidney. It comes from an aborted cell line. A little baby girl that was aborted in Europe, her cells were cultivated kidney cells. And this female DNA is injected into males. If you perhaps ever heard, I feel like a woman, DNA never stops replicating, just letting you know. So after seeing very numerous autopsies of children, I have concluded that some of the effects take a very long time to take full effect. For example, attention deficit disorder, cancer that we see in 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds. All of these are long-term effects of the vaccinations, especially when given together, they are much more severe. So I just want to plead with the board, if there's any request to mandatory vaccinate children in order to allow them to attend the school, please carefully review all of the ingredients of said vaccinations. I have a report of a little girl, Maddie, she's about 12 years of age. After she received her second dose of vaccine on January 21st, she became disabled slowly but surely. She's on a feeding tube. She's paralyzed from the waist down. She can barely speak. Some of these take a course of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here, by the way. Our next one is Sheldine Clough.
Hi, I don't have to repeat my name, do I? You know me. You missed me, didn't you? Oh, sorry. I thought you would. I'm here tonight about concerns of your hiring practices, your survey. The survey you did online, I've been working for 3 days to get the results on that. I got a phone call about 5 o'clock tonight saying I could get that emailed to me. So I don't have the information to share with you tonight. But I am concerned about the situation that took place in the process of the hiring and how it was done. There's some character assassination that went on in that hiring by a family that is ruling to take over the football program at Sholo Unified School District. I hope that you have enough sense to look into it. You did approve some of these coaches that are going to be the new coaches, but I think that you've missed, I've got records on one of your coaches having DUIs, not 1 or 2, and they are criminal. So he is going to be coaching and working with our children in the high school. And maybe you might want to do a little survey on that, little research. The community is really concerned about the choices that was made. I feel like character assassination doesn't need to happen to alumni that have been at the school district 15 years. They ought to have an opportunity to have a chance to stand up for themselves instead of women saying, he's too tough, he's too mean, he just does not nurture enough. So it is good in the community. So it is your responsibility to make sure you shut that down and fix it and make it right with the people that was wrong. That's why I'm here. I'm representing the concerned citizens of Shoal, Arizona. I think the way you did it was just almost sick. I've never seen anything happen that in our Shoal School District, the way it was set up. Talked to the principal today. He said that it was done justly. He put it together. So you might want to look into it and just see exactly how it was done. You can't let a family take over the school district the way they want things done. That's not the way it works. We're supposed to have a just. We're all taxpayers, so we get the same justice as anybody else. Employees, students, teachers, classified workers. You guys talk a lot about classified workers in here. So that's why I'm here tonight. Hopefully I can get some resolve. I did have a good visit with Mr. Housley on Tuesday, but I'm really concerned what I found out in the last 3 days. So if you need some information on your coach that's had several DUIs, I'll get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3.5, future board agenda items. Anybody have anything that they would like to? No, thank you.
Mrs. Boyer did mention something during the work session, or prior to the work session, that maybe we can consider at our study sessions. I would like to condense the number of agenda items at our study sessions so we can really focus in on and hone in and not be spread out so much, one. But what she had suggested is perhaps in our study session, we put in there as an agenda item, review and questions of any of the regular agenda that might need to happen, just to review it to make sure we know what it means and those.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with doing that?
Yeah, I'm great with that.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Great, thank you.
Typically, when I have issues, I call Mr. Housing and visit with him in the days prior to the meeting. I don't know if I'm the only one that bothers you.
No.
You'd rather do it that way, or?
I'm never bothered, but no, everyone calls when they have questions. I think this would just allow us to, we'd come into the board meeting and had a thought pop in and like, hey, I just need clarification of this.
And to have some dialogue if needed, and clarification or,
I think it's fair.
thank you.
Anything else? All right, item 4.1, approval of overnight and out-of-state travel. Mr. Housing.
For your consideration this evening, Mr. Marchant recommends Mike Hall and Kate McNeil take the cross-country team to training camp in Oceanside, California, August 12th through the 14th. Funding through Shoal Youth Foundation tax credit and team fundraisers. Mr. Marchant also recommends Andrew Brumfield, Seth Jane, Gabe Bastillos, Eric Rask take the boys soccer team to mountain camp at Greens Peak, August 12th through the 14th. Funding through the Soccer Booster Club. And then those are there as far as travel dates for high school athletics and other things that are coming up, just for your consideration this evening to get ahead of the game a little bit.
I'll move to approve the overnight and out-of-state travel.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.2, approval of SLJH PBIS handbook. Is that you?
There's a lot of things in there, isn't there? Yes. So as you know, a few years ago, Whipple Ranch applied for the PBIS grant through the state, and the junior high followed suit. And they're in their second year, and in that second year, they're required to create a PBIS handbook and have that approved by the board. So that's what's before you right now. It has been reviewed by the state, those who oversee it. I know Mrs. Clark's not here tonight, but Mrs. Hall certainly could tell you that they put it through some scrutiny and make sure that everything that they want you to be successful. So they've reviewed it, and it is before you this evening for your consideration.
I'll make motion to approve the junior high PBIS handbook as presented.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and second. Any further discussion on this matter? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.3, approval of Shoal Junior High Student Family Handbook.
So before you this evening is the student family handbook and the family handbook. The student family handbook. It's not two different things. It's one thing. They're just as you can see in Mrs. Clark's memo there are some updated, more user-friendly format, less cumbersome. Class fees have been removed. Band and orchestra instrumental fees are still included. Behavioral expectations have been updated to match that goes with PBIS and their approach. Supports a move to a school-wide positive behavior intervention, which is PBIS, and stresses positive behavior incentives and routines. So that's what you'll see reflected in the changes for this year's handbook, and I ask for your approval.
I'll make motion to approve the Shoal Junior High Student Family Handbook as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion second. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.4, approval of the junior high start and end times for the 21-22 school years.
So the proposal by the junior high is to help with the movement there during the end of the day. Previously, we were out 5 minutes earlier. The high school was out a little bit later, and you kind of had to monitor kids for an excessive amount of time when we were waiting for the buses and the high school to get out, parking lots to clear, and it just created a little bit of a conundrum. So what you'll see reflected in the recommendation from Mrs. Clark is that the start time is at 8 o'clock, which is the start time that we have at most of our schools, and then 3:10 being so a 5 minute later start and a 5 minute later end, so that it still balances out with the same amount of time, but it will help with things at the end of the day, so we don't have to supervise the kids while we're waiting for high school to even let out.
Mr. Housley, will transportation be able to accommodate this? I know that back when the school went to a kind of more uniform start time, there was some busing issues. Will that be, have you guys worked those details out?
Yeah, so in the morning, it's the same. It's still the same drop off. So that really doesn't impact. That's not very hard. They come in and drop them off.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just 5 minutes different. The kids are waiting on the basketball court for the buses to get there and for the high school to get out anyway. So all this is going to do is allow the buses to be there and them to come out and get off.
Great. And I'll move to approve the Shoal Junior High start and end times, to approve the time to start at 8 a.m. and end at 3:10.
I'll second.
I have a motion second. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.5, approval of contracted services for the 21-22 school year. Mr. Housley?
What's before you this evening, members of the board, is annually, for the most part, a lot of our services that we offer through the special ed department are specialized, the specialized types of services like speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. It is really expensive to hire any of those therapists in a school district. So school districts like us have gone out for contracted services. In fact, we're a part of a consortium which we've approved before, the Navajo County Consortium, and they do provide some of the services that we can. But I just want to remind you, I was in a meeting with all the people that consortium services, and as superintendents and special ed directors on that phone call, it was very clear to me as they started to talk that the consortium, doing as good of a job as they can't possibly provide enough services to meet the demand of the need. And so that requires school districts to take on outside services outside the consortium. And that's what's before you tonight, is those services that have to be provided that we can't get through the consortium, that we still need to provide to kids. And so we do it on a contractual basis, each of these serving as independent contractors.
Are these all renewals of people who have been working for us previously, or any of them new?
As I looked through it, they all appear to be new. Mrs. Marsh, they're not new, renewals.
Returning.
They're returning. Mrs. Marsh, is that correct?
I'll move to approve the contractual services for the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.6, approval to close open enrollment for SPED students for the 21-22 school year. Mr. Housley, you get this one?
Yes, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. Each year we review our enrollment numbers and our staffing for said numbers. In the last 2 years, we've closed open enrollment at different stages for special needs. Students that would be coming, for instance, if a child lived in the Blue Ridge School District and wanted to come to school here that had special needs. And we don't have the services to provide for them right now. Our caseloads are high. We have a high demand on the needs that our students have. And so right now, to protect those caseloads for the students who live inside the Show Low boundaries, we feel like it's necessary to close open enrollment. Now, I do have to give you a little caveat. The state legislature has, in improving a budget, had some things on the docket that were vetoed or went away, and then they brought them back on as part of the budget process. They can bring them back up as they want to, and they did. And inside part of those, it essentially, and we're in the process of doing research and review of these policies, but on the surface, what it does is it removes school district boundaries and similar things to that as far as transportation and the effects of that. Puts into place carpooling and other things that can be part of it. So it's very, very complex, but it could affect. So what I'm saying is, after we review and we get direction from council and other things on the effects of this law, the legal changes that come with this law, and when it goes into effect, I may be coming back to you and saying that what we put in place tonight is of no effect because of the changes in law.
Mr. Housley or Ms. Marsh, is this going to affect any current students? This is students who are currently enrolled but might be living in the Blue Ridge Unified School District will still be able to participate, right?
Yes, this just affects students who would be new to the district from another district. They haven't attended at all.
Okay. And then I'll move to approve the close open enrollment for SPED students for 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.7, approval of extra contract days for mental health specialists. Mr. Housley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. These are consideration for an additional up to 4 days for Mrs. Starkle and Ms. Ramses. They've been working on creating a verbal de-escalation training that would be provided to staff to support them in their classroom. We've talked about the increase of the types of behaviors and things that we're seeing in classrooms. This is a verbal de-escalation is a process in which in your classroom you can bring things down prior to, and rather than escalating it, you can learn how to de-escalate it. This would be training that would be delivered to staff to help support them, give them more tools in their toolbox when that kid erupts in classroom on how they can help to de-escalate it rather than add to the fire. So they need up to 4 days to continue to finalize this and get that together.
I'll move to approve the extra contract days up to, well, their request for 4 additional days or however many are needed to complete the training. So.
I'll second that.
I'm very happy to see this, so thank you.
Yeah.
Say that again?
I'm very happy to see this, so thank you for putting this together, whoever has done so.
With that said, I have a motion and a second. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 4.8, approval to pay staff for IDEA required child fine.
So we brought these names to you earlier to conduct child fine, which we're required by statute to find those students who are not of kindergarten age who might need special ed services, like speech is one that's pretty popular. You find students who can't articulate, so you help give them services prior to entering kindergarten. And this is a request to pay them for those, for that opportunity. That will happen July 28th.
Motion to approve to pay staff for IDEA required child time as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5.1, approval of resignations, retirements, and terminations. Mr. Hauser.
For your consideration this evening, the resignation of Claudia Layton, Laura Duncan, and Jana Blay, all are paraprofessionals within the district. That each of them are actually at different sites for your consideration this evening.
I'll move to approve resignations, retirements, and terminations as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any need to talk about this further? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 5.2, approval of new hires, renewals, and transfers.
For your consideration this evening, Mr. President, or Mr. Vice President, members of the board, Catherine McCraley at Linden, third grade, Cheryl Coates, the Secretary Health Tech at Linden, Tyler Yeager, Nicholas Homestead, fourth grade teacher, Ashley R.K., Whipple Ranch paraprofessional 1, and Rihanna Anderson, Nicholas Homestead paraprofessional level 1, and Tammy Hensley, high school finance secretary. That is pending return of the fingerprint clearance card. Renewals, Glenn Price, transportation mechanic, Eric Lamb, warehouse, Eric Hanchett, high school teacher coming back as through ESI, Marshall Pratt, also through ESI, and Kathleen Baki, the high school librarian. Transfers, Dave Nicholas from high school athletic director to Nicholas Homestead special education teacher. Susan Rivera, junior high school paraprofessional to high school paraprofessional. Polly McGee, paraprofessional at Nicholas Homestead to Whipple Ranch. And Amber Judd from Nicholas Homestead as a paraprofessional to the high school as a paraprofessional. For your consideration this.
I'll make motion to approve new hires, renewals, and transfers as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. 5.3, approval of substitutes. Mr. Housley.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, for your consideration, Suzanne Bray and Laura Schulten as substitutes for the district this year.
Motion to approve substitutes as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5.4, approval of stipends, volunteers, and event workers. Mr. Housley.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, there are a number of those here in the attachments. Mark Chavez, 8th grade football head coach, Lana Howard, head coach at 8th grade volleyball, Brian Duncan, cross country, Taylor Reedhead, softball. Those are all 8th grade. 7th grade basketball, Hal Frost. 7th grade girls basketball, Robin Kikwapu, as head coach. 8th grade Mike Boyce, head coach in basketball, and 8th grade Sharice Schubert as the head coach. Boys soccer, Chad Dietering, assistant JV coach, and girls basketball volunteer David Moore, and summer driver Sherry Cheeks is a summer driver through 728 for activities that we may have between now and that need a driver. Let me make sure. There is another listing your attachments there, and that one's pretty exhaustive. Would you like me to read it?
I would just want clarification on that second document you were mentioning. There's columns that are saying level and district stipend, yes or no, and type. Are we just voting on the people? We're not, or are we approving all of that stipend information as well?
These are just for those people that are in those positions.
Okay. Because there's a lot of question marks, so we're not.
Yeah, just the
approving-
names.
That's
Okay,
just a
great.
working document.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
we're
the-
going to clean that up.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. My motion to approve stipends, volunteers, and event workers as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5.5, approval of contract revisions. Mr. Housley.
We have two for your consideration based on the transfers that were made. Taylor Rogers as a para 2 to para 1 increased to 8 hours per day. Amberjet increased to 7.5 hours per day. Those for your consideration this evening.
I'll make motion to approve contract revisions as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 5.6, approval of new and revised positions, Mr. House.
In your board book there, you'll notice that this is tied to the Talon program that provides the environment in which our high school students can go in and take their college classes. We weren't initially part of the Talon program when it rolled out back some 10 years ago. The grant expired and there was a school that just couldn't, they got the equipment, but they couldn't get enough kids or any kids to participate. So there was 1 year left in the program, and MPC asked us if we wanted the equipment. That was a couple years ago. We got the equipment and we have our students participating in that way. Up until this point, we just sent our kids over to the MPC campus where they participated. Now we can have our kids stay in the school because they might have one class and it saves in travel time and all that other stuff. So part of that agreement is we have to provide someone while the classes are going to supervise that, and it can be a paraprofessional. In this case, we're recommending that our librarian, Mrs. Baki, take that on because we are moving the Talon Lab into a classroom that's just off the library, and we're moving it into that area. So she has agreed to do that, and we would ask that you approve her as the Talon coordinator in that role. And that's what it is. The Talon coordinator is there in case a student has an issue with technology or a question that can't be answered by the professor during the.
Has that been working pretty well, having them do that as opposed to going on campus?
You know, it's probably 50-50. I think there's some kids that would really love to just have the college experience and be there, right? And there's some that are grateful that it's on campus because they don't have to rush to get to their next, right? And so I think there's probably some that feel both.
I think this is a great program. I applaud that we're doing it. I think it's phenomenal that we provide that opportunity for our high school students. With that, I'll move to approve the new and revised positions has been outlined.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7.1, approval of IGA between Navajo County Community College District and Shoal Unified School District.
This is our annual renewal of the Talon grant, that Talon that we just approved the coordinator for. So this is just an annual redo of that agreement between us and NPC.
I'll move to approve the IGA between Navajo County Community College District and Shoal Unified School District for the Talon program.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7.2, approval of IGA between Vail and Sholo for Beyond Textbooks. Mr. Housley.
Again, this is an annual agreement. Nothing is changed within the agreement. I would ask for your approval of the intergovernmental agreement between us and the Vail School District for Beyond Tech.
This program continuing to do well for the district, staff, still invested in it and things are working well for our kids. And
Yeah, I don't know how we would have responded to the change when they move standards to one grade to the next, when they adjust them, when they move them. We don't have the mechanism to make those adjustments. Beyond Textbooks simply puts that in place for us. They move the standards. They'll move them from 5th grade to 4th grade or whatever the state moves them from. That all that process happens with that. The magic and effectiveness of any standards-based delivery, which is required by the state, is what happens between the teachers and the students. So with the teachers accessing the resources, they access the resources on here, but they also access resources in textbooks or on other online resources too. So really the power is in all the work that has to be done to get them organized and to have the material at our.
Okay, good. So it's still win-win then.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve the IGA between Vail and us for Beyond Textbook as presented.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-3. Approval of 21-22 SY attendance stipend.
Mr. Vice President, for your consideration this evening there, I know that in the last board meeting, there was a request that I look at some other options. So we've presented a few options for your consideration this evening and discussion, and we'll entertain any questions, conversation, or discussion that you might have prior to.
So A is what was recommended last month. B is basically what Ms. Boyer suggested. And then C is what you're now recommending. Is that correct?
C was just another option.
Oh,
where
because it says recommended next to option 3 on one of the memo.
Yeah, that's just what it's recommended when they're, maybe the verbiage isn't clear there, but it was just, everything is the same. That was one thing that was talked about here, all the same multipliers. So that, all the same multipliers with the exception of one, which is grade F, which was one that was also mentioned to not touch in the other thing, and that's the counseling position.
So there isn't one of these that you guys are recommending, just laying us out the options?
We brought the recommendation last board meeting where we felt like we would like to be, but certainly there's other considerations, and that's fine.
Okay.
And we would love to hear what the board would like to.
Do all of these numbers fall in line and within the parameters that we initially established?
Yeah, so I should have put that on there as a total. So option or proposal A, the total cost to the district would be $196,714, which is right about where we were. The proposal B, total cost to the district is staggered down. It's $182,153. And then proposal C drops it down to $167,592.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm the one who wanted to look at having it equalized at the 2.25%, and I actually, that's my favorite out of the three, but whatever you all.
I want to just clarify on all the options. There's been some misunderstanding or things that have been going around that says that some of them are less or than they were before, or they're this or that, or someone might be additionally higher or lower. All of these reflect higher amounts than they were in the previous year. And simply by putting, when we put the grades next to them, we were combining, just as we did with the retention stipend, when we combined employment categories that had similar work agreements as far as time and number of days and the type of positions that they were. So that's how the grades came about. So I wanted to just clarify that people understood where the categories were and how they were flushed out. Whether you decide that the percentages as run along the lines of Mrs. Boyer's recommendation, that's fine. All of those fit within the budgetary constraints that we have.
I felt that we were maybe trying to create a hierarchy amongst the classified employees, and that, and I had mentioned that last month. And I think that probably was my biggest push in wanting it to be the same for everybody. at the same percentage. I know that the amounts are still different, but I still feel like that I just wanted to be fair across the board and have the same percentage across the board, and not feel like maybe it may be perceived as valuing one category of employees over another. And that's where I came from with the 2.25. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that for all of these different proposals, it would be an increase from previous years. And with that being said, and they're all within kind of how much we were willing to spend, I'm perfectly happy going with the plan that Kelly prefers.
To clarify, that was proposal B.
B,
Right.
yes.
And option 2
Yes.
or B?
Yeah, option 2.
So with that, I'll go on ahead and make a motion to approve the attendance stipends based on option 2 as presented to us this evening.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Since we were just on stipends, I'd like to just make a comment about stipends. I want to first appreciate you as a board for your consideration towards this. I did the calculation just the other day, just out of curiosity, to what the effect on one category of employee was, particular a 12-month employee who's in the classified area on the retention stipend. Okay. The equivalence of that retention stipend that you put in place for that category was an additional $1.58 per hour if you calculate it over the course of the school year. I wanted to say that because I don't want it to fall on deaf ears, because you made a significant contribution to all employees. You knew when we were in the work session that projections were difficult and we could only do extra spending within certain parameters. And so you explored options and you looked at what options were with the federal money that has come in, and $1.50 plus an hour over the course of the year, that's significant. And you add that into with the attendance stipends. I think you made a great effort to touch everyone's salary at one point. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Item 7.4, approval of 21-22 SY regular and sports.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, in front of you this evening is a topic that we've breached earlier in the year, and I'll have Mrs. Beecroft kind of lead out on this. There are some things there that just for, I believe that I'm not speaking about the wrong one. Yes, I'm speaking about the right one. So
Okay. I'm pulling up on there because my device never works. So I know we've had a lot of discussion on this, so I've tried to put it as simply as I can. The fiscal 21 is what we paid out in the year that just concluded. The proposed A column is what Mr. Marchant and his team have put forward after they did a very thorough review and calculation. My proposal has a few adjustments to it. So proposal B would be my proposal as the business manager. So if you'll notice, we are in alignment on a lot of the stipends. And I will say that going down, some of the stipends in our district have been in place for years. I don't know what was the parameter when they were initially set in place. I don't know if, we had excess in the budget and we just, grandfathered it there forever. I don't know. So I just think what we have now, what we're dealing with now with the loss of ADM and the new mind frame that we're trying to make it relevant for today is what the changes that I've put in proposed B. So if you'll go down the ones in yellow, those names, those are new for the fiscal 22 year that Mr. Marchant has put forward. If they're highlighted in orange off to the left, those are CTE positions at the high school, which is our career and technical education, and those are funded from NAVIT. Those funds are also limited. They pay salaries and benefits. So, it's not, we can't just budget whatever we want there either. They're limited. So just, those specific ones do not come from M&O. So going down, you'll see, like I said, we line up on most categories. The driver's ed, there's a little difference there. The city, in previous years, the city has covered the driver's ed program at 50%. I think Mr. Marchant met with the city. They've agreed to stipend or to cover that at a total of $5,000, which would keep both stipend positions at it'd be $2,500 per staff member. His proposal, obviously, he is going to allow the city to cover that at 100%. Mine would still put us covering half, which I think is fair considering it is for our high school students. So that's just one difference there. I just want to make sure we point that out. We align on a lot going down. If you have a specific question, let me know. So the biggest change, and probably one of the most, controversial, is going to be the group down where it starts the high school math stipends. So the math stipends, initially this came into play. There was a staff member that left, and the current math department decided, well, we won't hire for that position. We'll each take a chunk of his salary. It's 1/7 and divided amongst ourselves. Great, that should have sufficed and worked for that year, but it's been put into motion from that day forward. So to me, I don't see that calculation moving forward. It's not a position that we're stipending for a prep hour. It's not. We don't have that wiggle room in the budget now. Mr. Marchant's desire, and I can appreciate he's wanting to leave those at 100% of what they were, with the exception of Mr. Gillespie, who he teaches 4 math periods and then he picks up robotics. So my proposal would be to keep those in place for now and just make them a flat rate. So it would reduce them to $3,500, and then Mr. Gillespie's is prorated for the periods that he teaches. Going down the prep hour for Mr. Ramage, that would be a new addition coming out of CTE. And then the other big, point of contention is these prep hours. So in kind of calling other districts, what do they pay for a prep hour? What's the need? What's the demand for prep hour? Our surrounding districts, it's very small. They have 1 or 2 teachers for that demand that need at their school, which we have, I think we're up to 6 or 7. So that being said, I didn't move it to a flat rate. We could. I think Mr. Marchant, his proposal is moving it to the flat rate of the $46.69, which is 1/7 of the base salary for a teacher for fiscal 22. So in thinking about that, mathematically, it made a little more sense to me. If I'm a teacher and I teach science, it's calculated down to a daily rate. And then taking into consideration, as you'll note there, I went ahead and went a step further. So the prep hour stipends that I calculated are a daily rate divided by the 7 periods that they would teach to get a period rate for the 1 class period. And then it's calculated at a reduced number of days. So even though, it'll make sense, even though the calendar is at 180 days, with the changes that the district has made, teachers aren't teaching on Fridays. So those days are excluded. And then the initial teachers come back July 29th through August 3rd. Those are pre-class. There's no student. So those days are removed, and we're calculating at 145 days.
I'm kind of confused about that because, so even if it's not a day that they have the classroom of kids, they still are preparing for that class. They're still grading, you know, any of the things that we expect them to be doing on days that kids aren't there, they still have more kids that they're doing that for, even if it's not a day they're actually seeing the kids in the classroom. So I don't really understand the logic there that they shouldn't be getting paid extra for that because they have an extra, on Fridays, maybe they're doing a lot of grading papers. They have a whole extra class that they're grading those papers for. So I guess I don't really see that logic.
Well, to me, the prep hour stipend was to cover the class time with the kiddos. So that's how I interpreted it. If you wanted to calculate what time on Fridays they're putting towards the class period, that could be a smaller consideration. I don't think it would be at 100%. So with that said, those are the differences. The column A highlighted in the orange, that's what we're paying right now. Column B, that's the proposal. Column C, that's the second proposal. Like I said, other districts that in the area, we probably have more budgeted in this category than any surrounding district. The ones that I contacted anyway, we do. I'm not saying they're not necessary, but as we become more efficient with the scheduling, I know Mr. Marchin's been working really, really hard on that. And that would one of those things would add in the yearbook as well for an additional prep hour versus hiring. Last year we had a full-time staff member.
I remember Mr. Marchant talking a lot about how they were going to kind of try and classify different kinds of stipends. Is that all reflected in this?
Those are his numbers there.
Those are
yes.
his numbers?
Mm-hmm. Which for the most part, we do agree on a lot of them. The two categories, the grandfathered stipend for the math teacher, obviously there's a big difference. And then how we're calculating the prep hour. And then also we're in discussion, which we probably will bring as an additional proposal, is last year was tough as far as substitute. So during my prep hour, if I'm asked to go cover for another teacher, we're looking to compensate that.
Okay.
So we're just trying to fine-tune the details and what that looks like. Which obviously the money that we free up would help to cover that.
One thing for consideration as you're just thinking about, for instance, Mrs. Beecroft talked about prep hour stipends. Let's just hypothetical. If John's a teacher and I'm a teacher, and this year John has there's a need for John to teach a prep hour stipend, and he makes at the base salary $50,000 a year. At the current way that we do that, that would be calculated in. He would get 1/7, 1/6 of his base salary. And then I'm a brand new teacher whose my base salary is at $32,000 a year, and the way the schedule works out, I need to teach in my prep hour. Well, now it's 1/7 of my contracted time. The very next year, it goes back, and John needs to do that. The point of my example is that strategy makes it very, very difficult to plan year to year for budget consideration. And so that's just something for food for thought as the board considers, kind of what approach you want to take as far as these stipends are concerned. And so you'll see in a lot of schedules, you'll see a flat rate or a percentage based on the base teacher salary, so that it stays consistent and you can consistently budget on those things. There's consistent factors in the calculation. So that's reflected in both Mr. Marchant's and Mrs. Beecroft's proposals. There is trying to find that consistent anchor point to make decisions. Mrs. Beecroft, would you, while they consider that, unless there's immediate questions, I know there's a lot of food for thought there. Would you mind reviewing with them the high school athletic salary schedule also in that?
So our athletics, as you just noted on the other spreadsheet that you looked at there, it's very confusing. So my attempt in doing this is not to reduce pay, not to change pay. It's just to put it in a format that's easy to understand, easy to see what we're doing. It's structured. It's clearly defined what each program entails with a price tag. So as you can see, just so it makes sense, like the format, the first example, we have a cross-country head coach and a golf head coach. So each of those athletic programs is one paid position. So over here, I put a 2, meaning there's one of each. So down here, the total price of the bucket doesn't change. They can customize it for how they want to run their program. And then times 2, obviously, because there's 2 programs, that would be the price tag. It's much more concise and easier going forward. So when we present names, we can put them in which bucket. So you can clearly see, hey, the boys soccer team chose to go with option 2. They have a head coach and 2 assistant coaches, and that's how it will be paid. Overall, comparing it to what we paid this year, it's very minimal difference as far as money. Like I said, the goal wasn't to shave off money. We can all agree that we want good quality athletic programs. The total cost with this setup puts the high school athletic stipend schedule at just over $100,000. The way that it was this year for fiscal 21 that we actually paid out, which was kind of scawampus and not really defined of how many coaches each category, was 109,000-ish.
109?
9.
Okay. Has the coaches, have we shown this to them at all? I just wonder what the feedback is on this.
So I didn't get a lot of input from the coaches. It would actually put, because the current head coach amount is $3,308.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually an increase for the head coach, depending on how many assistants they choose. It is similar to what Mr. Marchant put forward, very similar.
And this is, just food for thought, this is the same approach that Mr. Hernandez took with this. And you can play this out. So if the coach, for instance, wanted to have 10 assistants, you could still play that out to 10 assistants. It just
So if
keeps the same amount that's budgeted for the programs for those stipends, and it allows you to have some flexibility. Whereas right now, it's just what do we pay, right?
Right.
I like that this keeps it consistent and gives the coaches flexibility. Yeah.
I have an example from one of the first years I was here. I had a question come from one of the sports programs. They said, "Hey, we want an extra coach. Can we have the booster club or someone else pay them a stipend or a salary?" And obviously, we went through that and informed them of the decision that could be made as far as that's concerned, which is no. Yeah, but in this scenario, they could have easily said, "Hey, we want to pay another coach for their time," and we could have went out and said, "Okay, this is what everyone can expect," then, and it would have been that simple. Whereas they were trying to find a way to do the same thing, but because every coach knows that you're not getting rich coaching, but you also are putting in a lot of time that when you ask a volunteer to volunteer,
Right.
even $50 for dinner is helpful.
So you were a coach.
Uh-huh.
If you were to see something like this, how would, with your coaching hat on, would you be acceptable of this?
I would have loved it because when I coached, I had 2 paid positions, one head coach and one assistant coach, but I had 7 volunteers. It would have been great to be able to say, hey,
From a piece
let's
of the
disperse
pie?
this out without, having to give them perks out of my own, right?
Right. Okay, good, thank you.
And it does allow room for volunteer coaches. So if I have 3 more people that want to, they come on as volunteers. Just now it's not real defined, like where's the line?
Right.
Who's paid? When does it move into volunteer status? So that was my goal.
Ms. Beecroft, what if we just keep the current FY21 current stipends, and is that problematic? Do we have the funds to do that?
Which are you returning back to the other one?
I'm looking at the gold column. Yeah, the
Regular
regular
stipends.
stipends, the gold column that we currently have in existence.
That's an option if you want to keep everything as is. As far as the crunch that we have, our ADM loss, trying to whittle down anything, we don't have a lot of category, like the salaries and benefits are set. So we have very little other items to kind of whittle down. I know earlier in the year, I proposed the change for the benefits. That would be a little bit cost effective for the district, help supplement that. We can't subsidize it at 100%. With enrollment in decline, like somehow we're going to have to start kind of addressing the areas. I know that there's limited. We have like the only other things, and I jotted them down. We have wiggle room in the school supply budgets. I mean, that wouldn't be my first choice. We have our fixed costs going up, our electricity, utilities. Those aren't, negotiable. And then the operating cost, software, different things to operate the school. There's really not a lot of wiggle room there. I've looked, we will save approximately 50,000 just on automatic renewals that I've looked into and stopped. I think for the past few years, we've paid Frontier for some services that we received elsewhere. So like, I'm really trying in categories to pull back, but if the ADM doesn't recover and we're left with the loss, like, I don't know how we can't sustain everything that we sustained with the previous student count, if that makes sense. So this isn't me saying we need to slash it and take it away. It's just, I'm trying to make an approach to let's move a little bit each in any direction that we can, more towards fiscal responsibility and having a reserve.
I just want to emphasize, it's been a long budget process, the state, right? And we've been pretty thorough and careful to consider a lot of things. I'm hanging my hat on the what if, and Ms. Beecroft just stated that. I'm an optimist. I believe student population will rebound. I completely feel that. We proposed a budget in our proposed meeting last week that went back to 2019-20 numbers and a 2% increase of that, right? So we're optimistic that it's going to rebound. We want to budget in that way. However, what if it doesn't? What if we stay at the 5.5% loss that we had this year? If we don't make decisions that at least lead us down the path to where we're kind of tightening the belt, if that what if happens, it becomes very, very ugly. So we're trying to protect against the what if, yeah. We're being very optimistic with the growth, yes. And somewhere in between is where it's going to actually land. We've had to go through this for the last couple of years, right? We were trying to, we projected high a couple of years ago, and it ended up right at 2%. Last year we thought, what are we going to lose in student population? Well, it could be 2, it could be 10, but it's probably going to be at 5, and we missed it, guys, by 17 students. That's not bad. But what if? What if we project a little bit wrong on this? And so I appreciate what Ms. Beecroft's trying to do and find any way. She when have we ever considered going and finding the contracts that we have auto renewals on and pulling those services back and not having to pay that, a $50,000 savings. I think that's great, to seek in there and find those. So it's, yeah, I think she's looking at multiple modalities to try to capture this, but any little bit that we can put there would be helpful moving forward.
Well, I appreciate the time and effort that's gone into this whole process. I know it's taken a long time, and it's taken a lot of work to do this, both on yours and Mr. Marchant's account. And I kind of wonder if maybe if we're going to consider one of these propositions, maybe considering Mr. Marchant's, so we're moving in the direction, but it's maybe not quite, you know, might not sting quite as bad to the staff if we were, you know, to move into Proposition A, but keep this, you know, keep this table and everything for possibly next year. We might need to be looking at it again and looking at Proposition B. I don't know, how do the board members feel about that? We're kind of meeting in the middle.
And it's kind of hard because, you know, it's so dependent on, in certain people, Mr. Marchant would be giving a certain stipend more than Ms. Beecroft, and in other cases, it's the opposite.
I know,
So it's not
right?
like one is giving everyone more and one is giving everyone less. It's just there's different considerations. And so it's kind of hard, you know, to figure out.
Well, do we want to take a chance and stay status quo? I just hate to see classroom supplies cut. You know, I already know that they're.
Because I mean, if we
And
set them in
that's the
place, I
top.
can't
Yeah.
revert and take it away during the school year. So one of those other items we'll have to give if
Right.
we're again in that situation. And as I mentioned last time, our capital budget has always been kind of like that secret purse. We're going to take it out of there. If we're trying to move away from that trend, because last year we had to move $550,000 to cover M&O. That's a lot of money. So I just don't know if we're not going to take any steps to try and push that back, like just so the understanding that money will have to be removed from capital. So
What do you think, John?
I'm appreciative of this look here. The thing that goes through my mind is I've been on this board for some time, and we've had ebbs and flows where we were doing okay money-wise, and then we really struggled. And this is the first time I've ever seen these things brought forward. Kelly, do you remember? You've got even more time associated with the district than I do. And I appreciate these, looking at these and trying to, you know, we're asked to be fiscally responsible. And this is a way of doing so. I'm not sure which one I like more or better. I think we've got to do something. I think that she's right. If we leave this status quo, then we need to be prepared to make the decision that we'll pull it from somewhere else. So where are we prepared to pull it from? Are we prepared to ask our teachers to go back to the store and get some more supplies because we cut them, you know, because they already taken it out of their pocket, you know? So, I don't know. I'm a little torn. I agree that you see where there's some give and take in both. Mr. Marchant's, the driver's ed, is no longer funded.
It would be funded 100% by the city, nothing from that or M&O.
Right, nothing from our M&O. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that for me. And then we've got some that get hit pretty hard by $1,000 or $2,000. I like the bottom line number.
Right.
I really do. And I'm appreciative of Mrs. Beecroft. The tough decisions are hard to make, and she's just thrown one at us. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I also I want to bring up the fact that we as a board hire people that we're asking to do a job. And when they do it, I really would like to support them. And even if sometimes maybe it's not 100%, but as much as we can do.
For the junior high section there, whose the recommendation is it for the proposal A? That probably wasn't Mr. Merchant.
No, they're calculated the same. I'm waiting on her final. Mr. Carlo, he will be a junior high PE teacher, so I'm anticipating that several of those will not be needed, but I didn't get her final, what stipend she's asking for. So
Okay.
that will fluctuate some. The calculations are the same. If we just leave it, hey, this is going to be a junior high only has 6 class periods. So these are based on 1/6 of their contract amount, where that is calculated at the reduced number of days, and still gives them the rate of the class period. But a much smaller scale. And just to point out, I don't want to make everything about the prep hours or the math stipend. There are other people that do a great job. Student council, the counselors, all the department chairs. I mean, there are cuts all over. So it's not. I just want to make sure it's not any specific thing we're looking to slash or cut. It's just especially looking at comps from other districts. We're super high on our stipends.
Do you have those in printed form?
I didn't attach them just because they were so hit and miss. Like there was maybe one school that has a set high school. Like I'll give you a couple for instances. The academic decathlon by Snowflake is covered at $800. The department chairs are covered at $403. So
Down the
So
road.
this is just discussion right now.
Yeah.
In a future point, can we have those just to look at, just in front of our eyes? Would it be worth it? Am I wasting time?
yeah, I didn't put it on because it wasn't for each category. The counselor extra duty is something specific to our district. I reached out about the prep hours, how they structure those. The other districts that I asked, Blue Ridge and Snowflake, have one. So
And Heber takes it and they do exactly what she shared with you, and that they take a daily rate, and then because they're on a 144-day school year, the stipend is based on 144 days, not the contracted number of days that the teacher would have. So the approach is varied, as varied as there are schools, and some have them and some don't have those things. And so we've looked at large districts like Chandler. We've looked at smaller districts like Heber. So I think they've really tried to pick through it. But I think if you would like to see all of those, we certainly could.
I would like to lay eyes just for fun, for lack of a better.
I don't know if I'd call
Yeah.
I could try to put it together.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm okay with not having seen it now, but at some point before we make a decision, I would like to lay eyes.
Okay, well, if we don't move for a decision, I'm in the process of setting pay scales. We don't have any more board meetings until school
This
starts.
is for a decision?
This is approval.
This is for a
Oh,
decision.
I'm sorry.
The other option, if you guys want since we have to have another meeting next week to adopt the budget, we could put it back for then. Other than that, school's starting and it's too late. So I need either we're staying or we're making a move.
I apologize.
Which I know we've discussed previously. I think there was a special board meeting in May. There was a big discussion about stipend as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a decision to make.
I'll make a motion to approve the 21-22 high school athletic salary schedule.
I'll second.
You want to do this piecemeal?
I guess so.
Can you state that you're going to break this into two motions?
Okay, sure. I'm going to pull out the 21-22 high school athletic salary schedule from the other schedules that are being presented, and I motion to approve it as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Back to then regular stipends.
Brent, where are you?
Yeah, what do you think?
I'm like Shad. I'm hopefully optimistic about the money coming in and the attendance rising and our growth and stuff like that. I am worried though. I'm. It's hard though when you're dealing with the state because we have such a huge budget surplus right now. Our economy's thriving everywhere throughout the state. We haven't. I mean, Arizona almost has benefited from the pandemic more than we've been hit economically from it. Our coffers are fuller than they've ever been at the state, and yet the legislature makes some idiotic moves that affect education. So now our teachers are hearing about this robust economy. The city of Show Low has a robust economy, and yet we as in education, the legislature doesn't put that as a priority. And so it's frustrating to have to deal with people in Maricopa County who are making decisions that directly affect our teachers. So my heart of hearts says we should keep it current and hope for the best, but then there's always that in the back of my mind, you have to plan for the worst. So honestly don't know where I'm at with it. So because I don't want to affect our teachers, and I don't want this to cause any problems for them, because I know that even taking $100 from a teacher is impactful, especially when we passed last year. We put the insurance benefit on in some ways. We didn't fully fund the entire benefit package, and I know that adversely affects our teachers. And so I think that in some of these cases, it's going to adversely, or I know it is, it's going to adversely affect them. So I always hesitate to do that. So. It would feel better if, and that's what I hate about the way we do ADM in the state of Arizona, is that it's a gambling, guessing mechanism. And I wish, and it's almost like I would feel better about saying, okay, we have to cut because it came in here, and this is like our hands are forced. But in this situation, I can definitely understand Mrs. Beecroft's desire to tighten in areas that we can. But I hate doing that just because I don't know that we're at a point that we absolutely have to. And so that's what causes me the hesitancy.
You make a great point, because 10 years ago, we would be sitting here saying our budget for next year is exactly where we are right now, 5.5% loss. And we would have to make surgical cuts to everything, because that's all we would have, because that's what our 100th day was. Now we're looking forward in a and we have to forecast what it's going to be, and it's the hope that makes this, the hope and the what if that makes this very difficult, right?
Well, and I think that the problem is the hypocrisy too, right? Like if I pick up the paper or I look at the Arizona Republic, and it's like booming economy, Arizona's firing on all four cylinders, we're record job growth, all of that kind of stuff. The Governor Ducey in his last press release talked about this tax cut that he's implementing because of how well we're doing and how well our reserves are and all that. And so I think that for, then when you're a person who's an employee of the government who relies upon the legislature to fully fund education, and we're saying, yeah, we might have to cut, the two just don't equal together. And so I think that that's where the disconnect is for me. And that's where, that's been one of my biggest frustrations since I've ever gotten into the realm of education, is how poor our legislature and our governor, and not just Governor Ducey, it was Governor Brewer before him, how just they do a complete disservice to our students. So with some of their idiotic decisions. So.
Well, just to kind of point out, with that being in mind, the extra funds that are thrown our way for ESSER, I think every position has been compensated to them. I mean, the board, when it was $1 million package, and I think the government is looking at that like, you have these other things, so make do. In addition, the attendance stipend we're able to retain. Each position, just food for thought, because I did look at Snowflake's proposed budget just to see, like, okay, we're doing a 2%. They're staying like spot on where they ended the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, that's pretty bold statement, that where their feelings are. So yeah, it is. It's a proposal. It's a projection. It's not a guarantee.
Dad, have we done anything to see, where our numbers might be this next August? Like, do we kind of can we forecast at all what we're expecting in student growth or loss? Or
So we've been receiving enrollments on our returning student portal and our new student portal. We are seeing some in there, but it's hard in July when people aren't really thinking of school yet. You can ask Mrs. Hall, the first day of school, all the kindergarten parents remember that the first day of school starts, right? And some of them register and some of them don't register, right? They show up on the first day and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, we only have 65 kids, and then 130 show up. You go,
yeah.
and that happens. And so we're trying to anticipate based on historical data, trying to on experience of just seeing the start of schools. I'm cautiously, as I said, I'm cautiously optimistic, hearing the reports of new homes being built and hearing, I just try to imagine how many children are in each of those, and how many are school-age children. And every time someone says, I sold my house, I listen, just like when you told us, well, this family bought. Well, are they new to the community? Do they have kids? So try to pick up on that. But I know, for instance, I had a sit-down conversation with Mrs. Cosgrave out at Linden, and she has called every parent to see if they were coming back or not coming back. Those who she hasn't had returning student enrollment for, and so, but it always shows low until we get closer to the school year, and then people are just like, oh, I remember school now, and they start to take care of the things. Yeah.
So you see the three proposals. What would you recommend?
I think there's I think inside of each of them, the things that are common, obviously, I agree with those things that are common. The things that I would question, just where you want to put priority. And I know I'm not answering what my proposal is, but I want you to consider how I would consider it. So when you look at the proposal, for instance, driver's ed, that one, there's a difference in there, right? So do we want to say, is the statement that we want to make is that the city's funding it fully, or are we saying that we're going to continue to carry a portion of that? That's what's in both of those. So if we say we like what is in Mr. Marchant's as a whole, but we dislike that portion, we would like to continue to share the cost of that, then we do that. Then you kind of make some adjustments. Here's what I would recommend. If you feel uncertain and you'd like to spend a little bit more time seeing how they are integrated, let's table it till our meeting next week, next Thursday, to approve the budget. And then, but we have to make a decision then.
Perfect. I'll make a motion to table
Can I
this.
say one more thing
Oh,
before? No,
absolutely.
just because I was thinking about it a lot. We've been talking about the stipends a lot, and I feel like today we've mainly been talking about how much can we save from each of these plans and that we really want to save. But from what I recall in previous discussions about stipends, I think the thing that I appreciated the most is that a lot of the stipends have just been around for a really long time without really examining if it's being equitable amongst the teachers. And so for me, that was what was the more important aspect of this reexamination, was to be able to see, well, this stipend gets this amount of money because that's what we've been doing for 15 years, and not because that's how much work is being put in to get that. And so that's the aspect that I thought was important personally about reexamining these. And I think with either of these plans that has been done. So I appreciate that a lot. So I just kind of wanted to, it's not just this whole discussion, for me, it's not about the bottom line and which one saves us more. It's more about trying to reexamine things and make sure that what we're doing is for reasons other than just because we have been for so long. I think it's important to do that. And it's going to be important to continue to do that and to have a structure in place to keep it make sense. You know, in 2 years, it'll probably need to be changed again. So I just wanted to point that out.
I think that's great.
This isn't about just the bottom line, the numbers that we're saving. That's a nice perk. But for me, that wasn't, I didn't think that was the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I think that's what John said too. This is the first time probably since he's been on the board that we've evaluated that. So I think that's great, a great point to point out.
So I appreciate the work that's been put on everyone's behalf on this. And I'm sorry if it's going to be hard for some of the teachers, but at the same time, the goal is for it to be equitable amongst all the teachers so that the work you're putting in is being compensated fairly and not just because it's the way we've been doing it. And I think that's what we need to be keeping in mind. No, sorry.
I agree with you. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to table this until our next meeting next week. That's okay, so we can think about it.
Okay, as long as we do have to make a decision
You put approval
so that
on
I
the
can put it in the
agenda, and
computer, because then we're mid-July.
we will.
I want to make sure that you understand what we're asking for, so that when we get to that point, we're not still having
You want to
some
look at
sort of
comps.
other expectation.
Is that what you're saying? You want to look at comps in addition to this? So just so you know, the comps that are pulled in all three categories were high. So
Okay.
I would be happy to do that, but
Okay.
in all three categories, all three proposals were high,
Okay.
with the exception of a couple single items.
Yeah, I would invite members of the board, if you individually have questions or wanted to understand the effect of integrating portions of both recommendations, to reach out to Ms. Croft.
Yeah, I probably will be.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Either let her know now what you're looking for, or tomorrow or the next day, give her some ample
I'm
time.
still a little confused about how it makes sense with calculating the 145 days and with that. I'm having a hard time understanding that as making sense, where I think a teacher is having more work for another class all the time, not just those 4 days a week. So I'd like a little bit more understanding about that, probably.
I agree.
I'll second Kelly's motion to table this.
Motion and second. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Where are we?
7.5.
7.5, approval of 21-22 SY classified salary increase.
I'd like to give Ms. Beecroft a chance to go through the recommendation.
Okay, so in talking about plans for next year, there's several different miscellaneous items. I've put them all here in one. For the district office specifically, with bringing ESI back to the district, we're not going to be paying them, which we pay them a 10% service charge or service fee, whatever, which equated to approximately $25,000 in fees. So we're bringing that service back to the district office, which we did intend to, and we posted for a finance specialist position, which was budgeted previously for a senior accounts payable that we didn't hire for this year. The ladies in the district office have worked their tails off, accommodating all the additional workload with ESI coming back. We're having to bring on pretty much all the substitutes as additional staff. It's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of work that's going to be having to maintain their certain requirements and tracking their hours worked. They earn sick leave. So there's a lot of detailed extra work that will be involved in that. So my proposal in talking to the ladies and just how it's played out, we're going to forego hiring our additional finance specialists. With that said, there is an increased workload in general, just with all the changes we've been implementing to get into compliance, paperwork and documentation and processes. I am recommending a 5% increase for the district office staff. Evie Warnicki is the senior payroll benefits specialist. Krista Sloan has come over from the SPED department. She's the human resource specialist. Theory is our accounts payable and student accounts specialist. Christine Dunlap is our accounts payable specialist and does all the district operations, utilities, and those things. There are specific, the numbers specifically are in the attachment for you. There's 2 items from the high school. Miss Becky Field, the high school staff, administrative staff feels that with the duties that she takes on, they're asking for an increase there. As we discussed previously a little bit, Kathy Bakke would also, in being in the library, would also monitor the kids on the Talon program. There's an increase there. We did move Misty Whitworth. She is going to fill the special services secretary or specialist position. Previously, Krista was over there, so there was 2 staff with some efficiencies that we have with online processes. That will be just Misty handling those duties going forward. And then I felt it was important we had 2 bus drivers that were still at minimum wage to move them up. That's an entry level, like for a relief driver, sub driver. And then with moving Miss Bakke, the other long-term librarian that we have, Cindy Price, is also on there for your approval. Overall, the impact to the budget, this is considering the salary increase, and then benefits are roughly 20%-ish. Puts us total impact to budget a little over $17,000. That just the ESI portion itself that we're saving covers that. The positions and part of Ben's proposal is the stipends that he's trying to reconstruct, allow him to make these other additions to salary should he so desire. And then I was asked to kind of give what are some of the savings that we're realizing as a district. It's not always just increase. So I've jotted some of them down. It's probably not going to cover everything, but I think they're pretty significant. They're going to help us. So we talked about the ESI fee. We've already talked about the insurance. That's roughly going to be around $150,000 is my projection. Once we get the real data in, I will let you know what the actuals are. I've already mentioned the gain in tuition. We were not billing that correctly. So we'll have about a $250,000 gain in tuition. And then the $50,000 I mentioned for some of the automatic renewals that we just kept paying, about $50,000. And then a big item is the Nicholas Homestead modular was paid off finally, which will free up about $200,000. So it puts us in the neighborhood of cushioning that $550, but yeah, depending on what happens and where we go, I would just like to move forward building more of a reserve. But those are the increases there for your consideration. Like I said, total impact to budget is a little over $17,000. That's with foregoing the district office position, as well as the additional special services position, and then the fees from ESI
let me just make sure that we're clarifying. I know she's mentioned this, but the savings from bringing ESI back is the savings, but it also increases workload. But that savings alone covers the projected increases in these. So that's savings from that plus the 2 positions that we won't be hiring back.
I'll move to approve the certified salary increase. And is this enough? I mean, I'm looking at some of their pay scales and very low. So
I try to be
I feel bad, you know.
modest. This is for the classified staff. Historically, since I've been here, the classified staff proposals have always been hovering around 2%.
Mhm.
I thought that was pretty bleak. When I put the figures in there, I'm like, okay, so I did go to 5%. You'll notice for the two that will take on the additional duties, they're a little higher, closer to 8%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
trying to be conservative, but
I wish we could do more, but I get it.
and it is well. I mean, the ladies in the district office, just similar, like trying to implement the policy and all the things, the feedback we're getting from the auditor. The workload is way up there. Like we're trying to implement a lot. So yeah, this is very minimal to the increased effort and the work that they are doing.
Yeah.
Vanessa, why did you decide not to fill that position and bring in another person?
So it's been posted for a while. We've reviewed applicants several times. Just it was never. I mean, it's going to be just so quick. Like, I don't think we felt that any of the applicants would really be a fit for our office. And honestly, they would come in at an introductory or initial rate. So just overall, it just didn't play out.
Okay, thank you.
And your staff felt like they could carry the,
I let them make the decision. I said, we can go ahead and interview and hire. I can push for, an increase. It can't be, exponential, but I can push for an increase. It's well deserved. But the ladies were all in favor of fulfilling the duties, which they've been doing this year. As you know, district office, during the COVID shutdown, the work from home and that didn't apply to the district office. Like we've been there, the wheels have to go around.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've always felt like it was better to not hire if it's not the right person rather than just to hire a body because you need a body.
Mm-hmm.
That very rarely ever works out. And so I appreciate your approach on this. Brant, you motioned, correct?
Yes, I did.
I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said certified, not classified. So I just want to.
I've moved to approve the classified salary increase that's been proposed.
Thank you.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Anything else, discussion-wise? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for the effort that you put in here. 7.6, review of ESSER priorities.
Mr. Vice President, if you don't mind, I'm going to go to the front second issue. And the camera can pick me up because I like being on camera. Part of the requirement of ESSER 3, and I want to make sure that, and as we go through this, you're going to see the differences between the pots of money that came as federal relief. And a part of the requirement of the last one that came, or we'll call ESSER 3, is that we get public feedback on our priorities. So tonight will serve as the presentation for that public feedback. At the end of this presentation, there is a slide with a link that invites the public to give feedback. This This document that you see tonight is currently on our website. If you went on our website to give feedback, it's in the top right corner. There's 4 gold buttons, and it's the second button, and it is entitled Making the Most of ESSER Funds. So if someone would like to provide feedback, we'd love to get that and hear what they would have to say about the feedback. Tonight, I won't get into specifics necessarily too in depth as far as what the principals and directors have recommended for expenditures. Certainly I'll give you ideas as to what they've proposed, but I wanted to give more of an overview of the categories in which the spending will be prioritized. And that's where we'll get our feedback within those priorities. So if someone here sees a priority that's presented and they say, well, inside that priority, I would really like to see X, Y, Z. Then they have a chance to tell us whether it's a high priority for them or it's a low priority. And so that'll be part of the deal. So I'll just have Mrs. Beecroft scroll through here. So just to give the public a general understanding of what happened, they have the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act. For all that language, it was the CARES Act. That was the first one that came. It was early summer last year, and it was a pool of money that was for us. It was $633,000 and some change. Now, what did we use that for? I will tell you that we would not have been able to start school August 17th had we not had that money. The amount of money that it costs to purchase hand sanitizer, masks, to do the things that we put into place to meet the guidelines of the CDC and the state requirements to open, just to meet those executive orders, that it was expensive. If anyone ever tells you that online education is cheaper, it probably is if you are built in that way. If you start out as an online deliverer of education, perhaps. But if you are a traditional school district like us and you move into the online setting, it's extremely expensive. And that is part of the cost that came out of that $633,000. Also, just a side note, we did have some money remaining in those coffers as of late in that CARES Act, that first amount of money. And Ms. Beecroft has worked with the custodians and the principals to find out what needs they needed as far as cleaning equipment and things to do their job more efficiently, so that they aren't burdened with the things that I even saw when I did my Walk in My Shoes initiative, where they had to walk across campus to get something out of one closet because they only had one and it was just in that closet, but they were working on the other side of campus. So they had a nice meeting. They found out what their priorities were, and we've been ordering those things. I believe some of them have actually come in and been moved.
So far, just all the new vacuum. So, yay!
The second pot of money that came in was just rate coming on in December. The CRRSA, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. We're just going to call it ESSER 2 because that's how the state looks at it. So ESSER 2 came in right at December. That's when it was approved. It's all an application process. It's federal money. It's a federal application process. It's not overseen by the Department of Ed. It's overseen by the Arizona State government. So it's a different process. It's a little bit different of an approach to meet criterion and review process. That was $3.1 million, a little over $3.1 million. That application process came open to us in mid-spring, early spring. And to this point, we haven't expended those monies. We started to set priorities and to put things into place for that. The last one that came into place shortly after the change in administration was the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. We call that ESSER 3. That was significant. As you can see, it was just over $6 million, $6.1 million that came as a part of that third set of stimulus, and that gave us a total of ESSER money. When I say ESSER, it's Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. So ESSER 3 and all the other ones combined brought our district $9.9 million. It's a pretty decent chunk of change to be able to use to help out. Now, there are specific things and criterion that these can be used for. One of the things that we have to keep in mind that it can only be expended in the way that you would expend any other grant funds that are federal grant funds. Now, you might think, well, that's really restrictive, but Title I, II, IV, all are included in that. Impact aid is a federal program. The way that is allowed to be spent is very flexible, and that is also a federal program that falls into these guidelines. So there are some flexibilities, but you have to tie everything that you expend back to a coronavirus issue. And it's fairly easy to do, but it is something that you have to consider when you write the narrative. Fortunately, those who write our narratives are very good at it, and I don't think we'll have a problem with most of the things that we put forward. So those are the 3 acts. I need to make sure that everyone understands that before we move. Okay, Mrs. Beecroft. So what is the goal? The goal, if you can see it there in front of you, members of the board, I'm sure it'll be put up on the TV here pretty quick. The planning goal is to address the challenges and gaps created by the pandemic. Challenges and gaps, that's part of our goal, to resolve those issues. And to use the funding to deploy meaningful solutions and create sustainable outcomes. I ask this all the time when someone brings up a proposal. I say, okay, that sounds really, really cool. How do we do it in year 4, right? Because if we get into something and we spend, let's say, $750,000 on something, and we get to year 4, we're like, that was really cool. It really was impactful. Now we have a choice to either get rid of it because funding's not there, or to find $750,000 to fund it. So it has to be sustainable. It has to be something that we can keep throughout a long time if, in fact, it is working, and we want to keep it as part of what we do. These will sunset, and they sunset. The first one sunsets first, and then the second one, and then the third one. By 2024, they'll be gone, and so that money will evaporate. And so we need to make sure they're sustainable choices is what we do. The next slide, you'll see here, I wanted to remind everyone, we've talked a little bit tonight about the challenges that we've had. And this is just a reiteration for everyone on what the challenges are. We've talked about it. 5%, it's actually 5.5%, but north of 5% loss in student enrollment. That factor, you can do some pretty quick estimating math. 5,000 times 165 students. That'll get you pretty close to the amount that we lost. Now, the state said we're going to build back in some of that money, and they tried to restore some of that funding to hold us harmless a little bit. But then they came back, if you recall, and they took money back from that because they said, oh, all of your online students, only 90%. So it actually ended up to be a very, very small portion that was built back into our budget from that 5.5% loss. Not fully funded by the state was the next point there. During shutdown, we had to continue. I think that was the sentiment of the board, of the community, and certainly we needed to provide an option for our students so that they could be educated. I feel for districts that are still today shut down and don't have plans to open. That's scary to me. Children without being educated. Increased expenses of sanitation. We talked about expenses of delivering online instruction. It's expensive. Compression of salaries. That's going to continue to happen. Just want to point out that the state approved increase to base support level, which is our base funding amount, 1.21%. That's in the budget that you're considering, right? Mr. Clark alluded to something that it concerns me just a little bit. On one hand, it's exciting on the other, but what is the cost of living projection? What is it going to be when they change minimum wage in January? It's a cost of living increase. What if it's 3%? Awesome for who gets affected by that. But we, as Show Low Unified School District, along with the other districts in the state, have to absorb that cost in our M&O budget without promise of increases to help support that. So that is a challenge. Compression is a challenge. And it will continue to be that because that is the statute. Every year, cost of living increases for the minimum wage. It's just something we have to expect and we have to plan for. And then increasing student needs. You've all explored very extensively the increase in needs that the students have in the classroom, particularly around social, emotional, and mental health, right? We've talked about that a lot. Those needs aren't going away. In fact, they're going to grow exponentially. And so we know that that's in place and we have to address those. Okay. So what is this about? It's about stakeholder partnerships and stakeholder input. That's what we're required to do by ESSER 3, and we want to get some feedback from our stakeholders. That's simply what we're seeking with this presentation. So what do we hope for? We hope to have the best teachers, right? We want the best teachers in the classroom. We want to be able to have them feel like they're supported. And I think we've alluded to a couple times this evening about some of the things that you've already started to put in place. I'll start at the bottom of the presentation there to talk about staff retention. You put into place staff retention stipends, which total $1.4 million. That's a huge retention package. I haven't seen one that reflects out that same way. I hope that sinks in. $1.4 million. As I mentioned, I did the hourly rate increase for one classification of employee, $1.58 an hour. Just that retention portion was the impact. That's significant. And I appreciate your concern for that. Professional learning, there's going to need to be professional learning around how to deal with the social emotional things that are going to come up, the mental health, the de-escalation. Those things we have to teach our teachers to be able to work in that environment where kids are going to bring the baggage of the pandemic, right? They're going to bring those. Fortunately, we've navigated some of that for a year, so we're pretty good at it. But certainly any supports that we can continue to build in, how to teach and to help kids cross those academic gaps. We did some summer learning lab this year, and some of the feedback that we got is amazed at the growth that the kids were able to make. That was awesome, but also concerned for the immense gaps that they came with. Kids that are going into first grade that really couldn't articulate some of their letter sounds or any of them at all. And it's not because of we haven't taught them. It's because of the effects of when I'm in trauma, it's hard for me to learn. When I'm experiencing a pandemic, it's hard for me to really process the things that are going on around me because my needs are at home, right? I think we all experience that somewhere. Social emotional supports, classroom technology. Currently, Mr. Clark has done extensive some surveying and got feedback on what type of devices. All the teacher devices that they use will be upgraded so that they have those available to them. We're anticipating that they're ready for them the first day that they come back. Also, the areas that we needed to upgrade, document cameras and other things in classrooms, those supports to help them there. We also are looking at things like our front office staff. Their computers probably were circa 1984. I'm just kidding, but they are old, and some of them are held together by faith. So we're hoping to be able to address some of those needs there. And classroom supports, what does that look like? There's some things still need to be fleshed out, but does it look like an additional paraprofessional in every classroom that supports, or at least at every grade level? Does it look like a support classroom where we can help kids that are experiencing trauma or high needs mental health issues? Are there places that we can take care of that? There definitely needs to be some fleshing out of what that looks like and what the duties and how that actually is put into place so that it can be successful. But those are things that are being considered. We've set aside $2.3 million for these categories and these kind of priorities inside of this category. So go ahead and go to the next one. Mental health. We did talk about a little bit of mental health, but we've also set aside $928,359. You say, how do you get such a wacko number? Well, they were all done in percentages. So this is the percentage of the whole that we were able to establish this budget amount on. So we have inside of the mental health considerations, you've already approved a mental health coordinator, which will lead the charge for these efforts. In-depth programming, social emotional learning, community resources, and suicide prevention. All those things that are that are going to happen. I'll be happy to report to you today that I reviewed a very very thorough suicide prevention and assessment document that has been put together by our team that is now under review will be under review with our legal team to make sure that we meet the criteria so that we can assess and support students who are having those suicidal ideations, and we want to make sure that we can support them. And then again, we talk about classroom support. The next area, loss of learning. In ESSER 3, 20% of the total budget has to be specifically put forward to address student learning. And so you'll see $1.8 million to that cause. And we have inside addressing student learning. A lot of these will still need to be the particulars fleshed out, but know that there's things that address student interventions. How do you intervene with those learning losses? Progress monitoring. We need to know where they start, where they end, and how they're doing in the middle. We need to be able to track that. We all use maps to get us from point A to point B to destinations that we're not sure where we're going. Progress monitoring provides us that roadmap to help kids get from where they are and cross the gaps to where they need to be. K-12 curriculum. We need to evaluate where we can put in curricular supports in order to help sustain or help support teachers in crossing those gaps. One thing in particular that would be inside this quick K-12, we do and will continue to have students that choose online options because they still don't feel comfortable coming back to school. We need to enhance and improve those options as we deliver it for those students that do and will continue to take advantage of that. Please know too that our K-12 options aren't just available to students inside of our school district boundaries. A child struggling in Yuma could participate in ours, and if we have a good enough program, why not? We can get there would be a student just as if they were here in the Show proper. So we're glad to be able to improve that. Summer Literacy Lab, we just concluded that. We got great feedback from our teachers who participated. We look to continue to improve that. And in August, we'll have our lead teachers come in and talk to you about their feedback and share with you the success of the program. We're happy for that and happy to continue that. After school programming and preschool development. One thing that we've talked about for 2 years now, we've been in meetings with experts around preschool about, and I think one thing we can all agree on is that early intervention in a child's learning makes a huge impact. And so when the state is talking about, they're saying we're projecting a kindergarten bubble, right? For kids who should be in kindergarten that were kept back because they didn't want to send them to start during COVID. Kids who maybe will choose to start late still, and those who might be born because of COVID. All those will, in the next 2 to 5 years, could create a kindergarten bubble. How do we address those needs right now? That's a concern that we have, and we need to do something about that at the preschool level. We feel like Whipple Ranch and Linden, they do a good job of doing a kinder fit to get those kids prepared and try to teach them how to just experience school. If we can put something in place that either develops a preschool or puts in preschool type supports, I think we'll have a leg up in trying to address those. Okay. The next area of thing is school facility improvements. Now you'll see $2.3 million there. There's a wide range of things that can be put into place as far as this is concerned. Whether it's, and I want to preface this with the comment that Mrs. Boyer brought up earlier, are we taking things to SFB? That is always option number one, okay? If you can have someone else pay the bill, that's awesome. But if we have to foot the bill, we have to figure out what our priorities are. So as you know, a health concern can be the carpets and the age of carpets in buildings. Having those replaced is something that we have as a concern and something we would put in that priority. Specifically, carpets in food areas like Whipple Ranch Cafeteria, Linden Cafeteria, and Nicholas Homestead Cafeteria, where there's carpet on the floor. You just can't get blueberries out. It just doesn't happen, right? And there's other things. Maybe when they pull it out, they'll have to find,
Did not want to be there.
There's other things that can be considered under this, and we flushed some things out that could be part of that, but, we just mentioned some vandalism going around the campuses. Security cameras, we looked at that before. That's a very impactful $32,000 decision, right? It could be something that's beneficial. I don't know. It would be great. It's going to be nice to hear feedback when we start to pull it. But those are some things that you would see under school facility improvements. Perhaps we wanted to improve we've improved some of our playgrounds, but what about the continued areas that are still deficient or old or aging? We can look to probably improve in those areas. So there's a lot that can be done to help this. Areas that we don't have air conditioning units that perhaps SFB won't even touch. We have spaces that SFB won't touch. If we're going to have them as classrooms, we probably need to have air conditioning placed in those. So that might be something that would be considered. Okay. All right. The other one here is one of the big challenges of our summer learning, getting to after school programming, no matter what it is transportation. So do you take on the express costs of running yellow buses to pick up summer school kids, or to run additional buses when, first off, we have a shortage in drivers statewide, nationwide? Do you try to really bend around that, or do you make an investment into White Fleet? These type of vehicles can be driven by anyone with a regular driver's license. And so they take 15 students. They're easy to move around. Our volleyball team just took them to St. George. And so they can get around, and we can go and pick up students. We can offer that during after school offerings. We can offer it during summer school offerings, and we don't have to have any specialized certifications for drivers, and we can really buzz around and get where the students are. This year we were able to have, we had 4 routes. There were some challenges with those 4 routes, but to be able to have more routes and to really spread out and pick up kids, I think it's going to be more impactful. We can really cause the impact of that to happen more. Not to mention that these are beneficial as we look to send teams and activities out. I just got word today that one of our White Fleet vans or Suburbans, the engine blew up. Well, that's one out of service, right? So we just sent 2 of these white buses to St. George, and we have a couple Suburbans. So if someone needs to go next week, what do we send them in? That's kind of the quandary that we're in. For a district our size to have 2 White Fleet buses, that's significantly under. So those are about $65,000 a piece, between $65,000 and $75,000 from the quotes that we got. So this would add an additional 8 white buses to the fleet to help with that. We also are looking at maybe an additional one to help support those. It would look a lot like this one right here, in that there is a lift on the back for special needs students who need wheelchair access or something. So we can get them too. Now, I say $65,000 to $75,000. I need to clarify why that expense is there. In a school bus, white or otherwise, they're designed specifically for student protection. The transit bus that goes around and picks up people in Show Low, if it's hit in a T-bone accident, it splits open like a can, right? The ones that we have to purchase for safety of students are reinforced just like our yellow school buses, so that it protects the passengers inside the seats. And so much more protective, but there is a little bit different price when you go to that level of security, but our kids are worth it. So we do project $600,000 in that. Now, between ESSER 1 and then what we just shared as priorities with ESSER 2 and 3, you will do the math and you will notice that it's about $1 million shy of that $9.9 million. And there's a purpose for that, because while we know what the priorities that we feel like we should address in umbrella areas for the district, perhaps when we get feedback, there's going to be other priorities. And perhaps there's going to be other things that we might find out that the community really feels we need to put a lot more emphasis on, let's say, transportation. That's the slide that's in front of me. And so maybe that goes from 600,000 and increases, because that's where we get the feedback. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case, but that's why we left a little bit out of these projections so that we can move to the needs that are demonstrated in the survey. So the last slide here, this is what they'll see when they go to the website. They'll click on it, they'll see the whole presentation. We want your feedback, genuinely. We want to know, $9.9 million is a lot of money. To give you a perspective, the budget that we're proposing with no grants and stuff is just around 15 million. So it's a good chunk of money. So we do need your feedback. You'll go to this page at the end, got the hyperlink there where it says click here to access and provide feedback. You click on that link, it'll take you to a brief survey, which will outline the current priorities that we have. Click on them, whether they're 1 to 4, high or low priority, and that'll help us to know where we should set our priorities there, and then we will seek further feedback. This particular survey will be open until the 16th. So, Mr. Vice President, members of the board, this is our ESSER 3 presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser.
You guys have any comments or any questions or thoughts? If something comes to mind, you know the phone number.
I will share
Not
out with the
mine.
board, there are not excessive, they're appropriate lists that were generated by each of the sites and departments, and I'll share those out in an email to the board so you can see what kind of things they're thinking inside of these priorities.
Great. Thank you.
So consent agenda items 8.1 through 8.4.
So for your review and approval, we have the ratification of the expense vouchers for the last month. We have the ratification of all the payroll vouchers that were processed. 8.3, approval of the governing board minutes for the June 10th meeting and the special July 1 meeting. And then 8.4, approval of the PTSO Booster Club financial.
I'll make motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you. Appreciate it.